Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. It's not every day that you read a mystery book where the author weaves social issues so relevant to women into the murder plot. With me today is Lis Wiehl, and we're going to talk about her latest book. And I would like to welcome Lis.
It's great to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. What made you write this book in such a way that you've incorporated a couple of social issues that women, don't like to talk about or confront in your mystery book, Face of Betrayal?
Well, a couple of different things. I've written a nonfiction book called The 51% Minority, How Women Still Are Not Equal and What You Can Do About It. And in researching that about law, I was a law professor and a federal prosecutor before that. Researching about how the law is so disparate with women as compared to men, it really made it clear to me that there's so many issues. Domestic violence is a huge issue that comes out in 51%, but a bigger issue that comes out in Face of Betrayal in a fictional way. That there was so much material that we could use and that we could impart to women in a way that was informational and would give you things that you need to know about your life and how to, what your rights are, but also that's going to be kind of a fictional read that at the end of the day, when you've gotten done with the job, put the kids into bed, run the dishwasher, run the laundry, done all the millions of tasks that you have to do, that you have that 20 minutes of just pleasure reading to get something that you're going to realize it's fiction, but it's also going to give you some real life perspectives on these three different characters.
Well, your job as a prosecutor in Seattle, was that where you came up with the idea to do this?
I was a federal prosecutor in Seattle, and my specialty was, if this sounds kind of funny, but my specialty was murder for hire. No, I didn't do the murders. I prosecuted the murder for hires, okay? And I changed the names in the book to protect the guilty. And you'll see there's a beginning scene with Lis Wiehl, the federal prosecutor, who's putting away a murder for hire. And what he says at the sentencing is, I had this 5'4" problem. I guess he didn't believe in divorce. And you can't make that stuff up. I mean, this is really what happened. Again, as I say, I changed the name to protect the guilty. And many times through the course of this book and the other book in the series of The Triple Threat, you'll see that where Allison and the other characters are talking about cases and or TV life that, I've dealt with in my professional life and as a TV reporter, as a daughter of an FBI agent, and working as a federal prosecutor. So did I come up with the idea, long-winded way, did I come up with the idea there? No, probably not. It was just an amalgamation of a lot of different adventures and thoughts, and just the thinking that at the end, I really wanted to curl up with a mystery that involved powerful women. And this series has three powerful women. One is Allison, the federal prosecutor. The other is Nicole, the FBI agent, and Cassidy, the TV reporter, which is what I'm doing now. And I wanted to give readers a chance to get behind the scenes, to understand what it really is like to be in a courtroom. How Allison would give herself, the extra 15 minutes before a trial would start to maybe get sick a little bit because her stomach was so nervous about getting into the courtroom. And how Cassidy worries about the television makeup and about how, getting older in the TV world, how is she going to, differentiate herself? How is she going to keep her job? How Nicole, as an FBI agent, a woman among mostly men, how is that going to work? And these are all experiences that, I've dealt with. So it came to me over the course, I would say, really of not just being a prosecutor, but being a TV reporter and wanting to give something back to women that I've dealt with all the course of my life. We all deal with so many important issues every day, and yet I wanted to do something that would be fun and entertaining and yet give you a sense of, for example, what really happens in a grand jury. I mean, unless you've been a federal prosecutor and or a grand juror and devoted yourself for 18 months to being a grand juror, you've never been in that world, because judges aren't allowed there, the media isn't allowed there, defense lawyers aren't allowed there. Everything when you are in a grand jury, what you say in a grand jury is deemed to be secret. So when I would come home from the grand jury, for example, and be asked, by my family, what'd you do today? Nothing, because you can't talk about it. But here again, I could have Allison get you in behind what's going on with the grand jury. What happens in an investigation of a missing girl? Because the whole premise of this story is that a girl from the West Coast, see if you've all think it reminds you of anything, goes missing after she interns for a very powerful senator in D.C. And she has had an affair with the senator, which the senator denies, because of course he wants to keep his political career alive. And so Allison and Cassidy and Nicole have to try to figure out what's happened to Katie Converse, the 17-year-old. Meanwhile, while the senator is vehemently denying any affair. So all of the fingers of suspicion, as you would say, are pointing to the senator. But did he really do it? And they've got to figure that out.
Well, one of the things that I liked about it is, let's just go back to the profiles of the women that are part of your team. And you even came up with a dessert called Triple Threat Dessert, which sounds scrumptious, but you don't read this at midnight, because where are you going to go for a dessert? You had the 3 women there, and they each have their own scenario. But what I liked about it is that as you wove in what the issues were, a single mom,
right,
that she never talked about who the father was, as if she should be ashamed of it, or worse yet, was the fact of the woman who was the individual who was in all these bad relationships, abusive relationships, and why she stayed. And then you were talking about the 51% minority. What do you think women feel when they're in an abusive situation that they won't leave?
You're right. Cassidy is going through multiple situations of an abusive relationship, and her friends Allison and Nicole find out about it sort of as we go through the novel, and it's an eye-opening thing for them. And I guess I talk about that, I thought that was an important theme, because I believe that so many women in this country still, even though the laws are, getting better and equal, we're getting more equality, although we only earn 78 cents on a man's dollar, getting better, but there are a lot of women that I feel are trapped in abusive relationships, and because of the economical situation or because of how they were reared by their parents, low self-esteem, feel like there's really no way to get out of it. So I wanted to portray Cassidy, who's this gorgeous TV reporter. She's got the world, the world is her oyster, and yet she's dealing and feeling trapped in an abusive relationship that her friends find out about and try to help her with. Because I really thought that would bring for a lot of women, wait, it's anybody and everybody that can be caught in that. And it's anybody and everybody that doesn't know how to get out. And even Cassidy, who had the wherewithal, who has a job and the money and the professional reputation and esteem, is still struggling with that. And I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end of the novel. You've got to read Face of Betrayal, because I don't want to go there, because I don't want to give anything away. But the characters, this is a series, and you were asking about Triple Threat and why it's called a triple threat. It's called a triple threat because there are 3 women, obviously, and they're not working together professionally. They've known each other since high school, but the prosecutor and the FBI agent work together. But the TV reporter, that's a separate thing. You're not supposed to work, if you're a prosecutor, with a TV reporter. So there's that tension between the media and the law and law enforcement. And you'll see through Face of Betrayal and Hand of Fate, which is the next book coming out, how they can help each other, but how that tension develops professionally. So that's the overarch of Triple Threat. But then they're friends, as I said, from high school, so they meet at restaurants, and they are lovers of food. Good pasta, good food, good burritos, good everything, and of course, at the end of a good meal, you have to have the dessert. I mean, what's a good meal without the dessert? So the triple threat dessert is, as I envision it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, kind of a 3-layer triple chocolate cake with some kind of really goopy good mousse icing in between and chocolate shavings on top. Can you tell I'm hungry here? And they share the triple threat dessert as well. So they're friends professionally, they're friends, you know, together and sharing all of their experiences together. I just wanted to have this camaraderie of these 3 strong women, strong but vulnerable.
As the 3 women work together and you discuss these social issues, how does it empower one another and everybody else?
There's one thing that we learn as women and as people, as we, you know, certainly I've learned, and I'll just put it in my perspective, as I've learned as I get older, when you're really young, you don't know how to say, yes, thank you, I would like some help. Yes, thank you, I'd like some friendship. Yes, I'd like my friends to help me. As you get a little bit older and you go through different experiences, whether it's in love relationships, whether it's in work, whatever it is, it's empowering to be able to say, yes, thank you, I do want your friendship, I do want your help. It's not a sign of weakness for me to say, yeah, thank you. And those that are giving you the help, your friends that are helping you out, they feel pretty powerful and empowered helping you. It's a really symbiotic thing. So I think with these 3 characters, where they're going through, you know, Cassidy has the issue with the boyfriend, and we've got Nicole as a single mom, and she's going through different issues. Does she talk about, you know, what happened with her and what her experience is? Allison, I don't want to give too much away, but Allison is hoping to get pregnant. You know, the 3 women come together and really help them each other out, and I think that's something that we all as women, as we mature, it's a good thing to learn.
Your life is like a thrill in itself.
Uh-oh.
You were on the Committee of Judiciary, did I pronounce that right? During the impeachment of Clinton.
President Clinton, right.
How did that empower you, change what you're thinking, or how can it empower women, what you learned?
Wow. You know, it's funny, when I was driving out of my driveway, I lived in Seattle at the time. This was in 1998, when the Starr report was coming out. And I'd been called back by the committee to, you know, interview for this job with the Democrats. And I'm literally pulling out of my driveway, and the bubble over my head was, I didn't have the job yet. Bubble over my head was, my life is going to change. This is going to change my life forever. And it really did. I mean, it was the biggest case a lawyer could ever have. I mean, you've been called by, you know, the Judiciary Committee during the presidential impeachment, and no matter what your politics are, that is the biggest case that you're ever going to have as a lawyer, even though it's not in a courtroom. I learned a tremendous amount. I learned about the media, and that's again why it was fun writing about an intern that came to work for a senator, because of course I had been there. I'd seen the senators, I'd seen the congressmen, I'd seen how all of that worked, seen how the interns interplay, and so it was kind of fun to bring in some of those facts.
Working on the committee, how did that impact you and change your life?
First of all, it was amazing to be on the scene of what you realized was history. And I had this little tiny dinky apartment that, you know, was kind of this little furnished 1-bedroom thing. And I would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to go in, and I'd have my little juice and watch whatever the cable news was in the morning and realize this was the biggest story. And then come back at 11 o'clock and see the reruns of the nightly news and eat my pasta with Parmesan cheese and fall into bed. And it's funny because whenever you're in even the biggest high-profile case like that, it's still just a job. I mean, you're still just working 20 hours a day. You still get a cold. You still have your coworkers say, can you pick up some Kleenex for me on your way in? But of course, knowing that we were part of history, knowing that our little team of 4 lawyers were making precedent, we're making things, you know, we were looking at our precedent, our historical fact was Watergate, you know, and before that was President Jackson. I mean, there was no other law to look at. And so even then it was pretty great knowing that we were a part of history, But as a lawyer and as a professional, my main focus was on just doing the right thing and making sure that the right message got out to the American, not just the American public, but to the international public that was watching this.
What advice would you like to give women to running their own businesses? You're on foxnews.com, you're on WOR, you're a professor at NYU Law School, and the list just goes on. What would you like to say to women about running your own business?
You know, I've never really run my own business, so other than when I taught swimming lessons when I was in high school, and nobody drowned, thank God. So I'm not sure I can give great advice on that, but I would say in general, and I'd say this to my own daughter, who's 11, almost 12, is, as Joseph Campbell once said very historically, follow your dreams, follow your bliss. And I know that sounds trite, but it's definitely true. I started in a private law firm after I graduated from Harvard Law School. I was in a private law firm for a few years. I took a pay cut to be a federal prosecutor, and I loved it. And from there, I took a pay cut to be a University of Washington professor, and I loved it. And then I started fighting with Bill O'Reilly, and I got into Fox, and maybe I didn't take a pay cut then, but I've never done anything just for the money. I've done it because I loved it, because I really was trying to follow my bliss and obviously pay the mortgage at the same time. We have to be realistic. But I do believe, and I think women are more gifted this way, in the sense of, you know, follow what it is you can do. Keep your mind open to what the opportunities are out there. Don't close yourself off. And don't be one of these gray people in an elevator. You know the gray people I'm talking about. They're just gray. There's just nothing, everything's just sad about them. You know, be one of the green or purple or yellow people, and just at least be willing to look out there and say, you know, there are other opportunities. Was I scared coming to New York with 2 kids as a single mom? Yes, that's what I did. And, you know, we did it. And were the first days frightening? Absolutely. But you just, like anything else, you grow into the job. You just do it.
You're not only an attorney, you're a self-help guru and a media specialist. You wrote How to Use the Trial Lawyer's Experience to Become a Johnny Cochran. How can we, as women, employ those skills to be another Johnny Cochran in our everyday life?
Well, you're talking about my book, Winning Every Time, and how to use the skills of a lawyer in the trials of your life. And that was really born out of, I taught trial advocacy to baby lawyers, for a long time. And what I realized was, wait a second, what we're teaching about how to become advocates and how to work in a courtroom really are the skills that you can employ in your day-to-day life. Let me give you a couple of examples. When you go into a negotiation, whether it's for a raise at work, whether it's for, you know, talking to your kids about, you know, something that's going on at school, you've got to think, what's your TOC? What's your TOC? Theory of the case. In other words, at the end of the day, if you're a trial lawyer and you go into a courtroom and you don't know what your bottom line is, what you really want, your theory of the case, you're going to lose. Okay? You got to know what is it that you want. So if you go in and what you want is a raise, or you want the 2 more weeks flex time at your job, or you want your kid not to be delinquent at school, that's your theory of the case. So all of your evidence then that you work towards getting to prove your case is involved in proving the underlying theory of the case. There are other things like pick your juror. I mean, good trial lawyers do this. If you're trying to get a raise at work, let's see, do we go to the HR person or do we go to the supervisor? Who's the person that actually makes the decision? And finding out who that person is that you're going to advocate to is half the job. Do your discovery. Discovery means for lawyers sending out millions of papers and trying to get all this stuff back and blah, blah, blah. It's very boring. Discovery for us means do your homework. Get the stats, get the homework, find out what you can, find out what's been written about whatever subject you're wanting to argue about, or not argue about, but advocate about. Do your homework so that when you tell a story, make a closing argument like a good trial lawyer does, you can bring all of those things together. So that's what I try to do in the book Winning Every Time. And it's funny that you ask about this because I was just rereading the book today for just another thing that I was doing. And I'm just looking at this going, oh my goodness, I mean, this really works. This really works. And I've had so many friends and colleagues tell me they employ these methods in their day-to-day life. And that is the most wonderful thing. I'll tell you one other thing about getting feedback on any of these books. I had a gentleman email me at liswiehlbooks.com about Face of Betrayal, and he said, I'm 88 years of age, and he said, waiting for Hand of Fate. I mean, I'm going to start crying. Waiting for Hand of Fate, which is the next book in this series, gives me incentive to live to 89 years of age. Now, when you ever start to think if this is not worth it, then it makes it totally worth it.
Well, that's completely beautiful. You said your dad was an FBI agent. How did that influence you, and how come you didn't go into the FBI world?
My dad was an FBI agent. My mother was a community school, college teacher, having come up from Denmark. She's a Danish native, and she got an American PhD. So it's pretty impressive that she's teaching Shakespeare to Americans when English is her second language. So I always grew up with stories around the table. I mean, our rule at home was we had to be home for dinner. It could be leftover, bananas, whatever it was. I mean, no, my mother will kill me for that. It was always good food. But it could be leftovers. But we had to be there and talk about our day and the stories of the day. So what I realized much later is when my dad was talking about his stories as an agent, or my mom was talking about her stories with the teaching and the students that would come in and their problems, to me they were just stories, but to them it was their profession, it was their job. So when I grew up, I guess it made sense that I always want to try to mingle those of law enforcement, journalism, teaching, literature. It just was, I guess I was like doomed. Doomed. I had no choice.
So much is on your plate besides writing the book and teaching, raising a family, a husband.
Raising a husband's the hardest.
Oh, okay. What's next on your agenda?
We're always juggling the balls. We women, we are always the biggest jugglers. And I guess I realized that sometimes the balls are going to fall. And I just hope they don't break my feet when they do. Because if we think that we can try to be perfect all the time, or even any time, we can't. So I try to cut myself a little slack. I try to realize that I have to prioritize every day and reprioritize every day. What needs to be done today? And how can I get to that point? What's my theory of the case to get to that point? Always the kids and family come first. But sometimes when you've got to, be out, you got to be doing your job, whether it's doing a trial or promoting a book or going on television to do a story that's really important to you, then that takes priority. And I'm really blessed that, my kids are great, and they understand. And they know that Mom will always be there at the end of the day to give them a milkshake. They love chocolate milkshake.
What prompted you to get so interested in politics?
Well, I think politics are just that's part of our American culture. If you read the newspaper, you watch the news, you're going to be interested in politics. But what I love about what I'm doing now and commenting is that I'm never told what political position to take. I mean, the day that I am told what political position to take, that's the day that I quit and I start cleaning houses. I'm happy to clean houses, because what I like about it is that I don't know what some of my comrades are going to say, and they have no idea what I'm going to say. And that's the fun of it. That's the fun of debating political, social, any kind of issue, is that you really is the opening of the minds and just getting out there with what you think. And I can be on one side politically on one issue, probably fairly conservative on prosecutorial issues and criminal justice issues, but much more liberal on other issues. And for me, that's not just the fun of it, but the real enrichment of it.
You've given us so much advice. Is there anything that stands out in your mind that you want to finish the show with?
Oh boy, well, first of all, it's been great to be here, and thank you so much for having me on the program and listening to my babbling along. But I really would just say that if you think, as a woman, a man, a dog, or a cat, that life is going to give you no hurdles and it's going to be a breeze, you're living in a world that I haven't lived in. But if you can tackle those as they come and just really follow your own moral compass, wherever you've gotten that from, for me it was from my mother and father, if you can hold on to that moral compass and follow that to help guide you in making your decisions and following your bliss, whatever that is, whatever your dream is, and realizing that you can, with effort, the harder I work, the luckier I get, you can do it. And just, I don't mean to sound trite, but don't ever let that go.
Lis, thank you so much for
You got
joining us today. You've given us so much information, and I loved your book again, Face of Betrayal. It was wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to hearing from you, and if you have any questions about the dessert, the book, you can write us here at The Woman's Connection. And Lis would be very happy to answer them.
And write me at liswiehlbooks.com, LISWIEHL books.com, and I promise you I'll answer your emails.
Thank you so much for joining us. Bye now.